We have a special feature for you today. We have Bob Baer from the University of Illinois Carbondale, who's going to share with us some of the lessons that they've learned in planning for the very large Eclipse event that they have that they're planning to host in Carbondale this year, and also they're planning to host in 2024 when we have the next solar eclipse coming up.
I'm Bob Baer. I work at SIU Carbondale, and I'm planning out the large events for Carbondale. We're planning on doing a really large observation in Carbondale, planning for 30,000 to 50,000 people to visit the area that day. And most of them will be on the campus of SIU. So what I want to talk to you about is if you're planning your own event, how should you do that? What are the things that you need to consider? When you're planning your own event, one of the most important things to consider is the amount of totality that you have at your site, if it's going to be a partial solar eclipse event or if it's going to be a total solar eclipse event. So when you're planning out your event, you should, one of the resources that I use is Javier Jubier's solar eclipse maps that are online. You can Google solar eclipse 2017 and look up his maps. The nice thing about his maps is there's a geolocation feature on them. So you can actually just click on the geolocation feature and it will tell you how much time in totality that you have at the exact spot that you're standing with your mobile device. So his map also tells you the contact times so that you know when first contact is, when the partial eclipse starts in your area, and probably most importantly, when the total solar eclipse starts in your area. So you need to write down those contact times ahead of time, and that also helps you to sell the eclipse to groups that you might be talking to, maybe your Chamber of Commerce or your Department of Tourism. So it really helps when you're talking to like your Department of Tourism or other groups that aren't familiar with what the eclipse is to make a graphic and explain when first contact is and how long the overall event is. This overall event, it can be up to 3 hours from when first contact is to final contact. Those are the partial phases. And then note how long your time in totality is. And that's going to be anywhere from 2 minutes to maybe 2 minutes and 40 seconds at maximum. So what we're doing on the SIU campus, we have a rather large plan for campus. We're utilizing mostly our athletics facilities on campus. And so those facilities are set up to handle large crowds. It's a pretty natural thing to have events in those facilities. We already have the concessions in place, the bathrooms. We also have, large areas to put people. One important thing to consider for your area is a traffic management plan. So most people need to think of, are they going to be converting some of the roads over to one-way during an event if they have a lot of people coming in? It's a pretty easy thing to do to tweak the traffic signals in your area so that you might allow traffic to flow a little longer in one direction to get people into your events. So if you want to go ahead and change the traffic lights and the timing on those, there's usually a city engineer that works on that. You can work with whatever your state Department of Transportation is. You find the office in your region is a good place to start, but ultimately either that Department of Transportation or you will end up having to communicate this to the city engineer. And one other thing to think about is the lights, the street lights. On our campus, part of our plan is to not have automatic lighting come on, for instance, because you don't want that automatic lighting to ruin the view of the eclipse. And that's something to think about all around town. Some of these cities, what I'm talking about with changing the traffic signals, that's to get people in and get them out efficiently. But during totality, some cities in the past have just taken and flashed lights red to get people's attention, because when the sun goes away in the middle of the day, you might not pay so much attention to what that traffic light's doing, and just having a red flashing light at intersections tells people to stop. Parking is very important. At SIU, we're actually converting about 27 acres of farm fields over to parking, and then we're working with our parking division to identify open parking lots that we can designate as event parking for the day. One of the things that's really easy for most communities to do and to identify with is like an art and craft fair. Most communities have these seasonally. It's something that you can do for a solar eclipse festival if you're doing one in your town. And it's really important to communicate this initially to people in terms that they can understand. So if they have a festival in their town, like Murfreesboro, Illinois, right by Carbondale, has an apple festival. And that's something that the planners there can relate to. On our campus, because most of what we're doing is in the athletics facilities, we talk about these events as if they're a sporting event. It's just, instead of having a game going on, we're mostly watching what's going on with the sun and doing related STEM activities. One of the reasons to consider like an art and craft fair or something similar is that people who come to watch eclipses, we have a group of people who are very passionate about eclipses, and that's all that they're there for, but they'll be bringing other people with them, and those people will need something to do. So it's really important to plan out something. Think about like a family that's coming to see it, and think about this in terms of, it could be a longer event during the day of the eclipse, and you might think about doing things that weekend leading up to the eclipse too. The specifics of what we're doing on campus, we're focusing our events around the athletics facilities, and the stadium is really the focus of most of our planning right now. We're doing programming in the stadium, so instead of just bringing in people and setting them in the stadium and saying, watch the eclipse, we're actually doing programming, opening the doors of that stadium, the gates to the stadium at about 9 a.m. local time for us. The eclipse totality doesn't happen until 1:20 p.m. for us. So we're doing light program leading up to it, like videos that people are going to watch, and they're going to see what's going on with the eclipse. We're also pulling in feeds from across the country so we can show them just a sample of what first contact might look like out in Oregon before we see it, and we can show them a sample of what totality looks like out in Oregon. Remember, the eclipse enters the country from the west coast and takes about 90 minutes to cross the country, so anything happening to the west of you will happen before you. But keep this in mind, internet connectivity that day could be a problem. Don't think that you can just, maybe an hour before the event, get online and pull down the NASA Edge megacast without any trouble from the internet. What you should consider are the alternate methods that those megacasts and those streams are going to be going out over. NASA Edge is planning on doing this as a broadcast over NASA TV. You can pull down NASA TV off most satellite and most cable channels. Those methods are, obviously, they're much more reliable distribution than just trying to pull in an internet feed. And in some of these large events areas, one of the things we're having to tackle on campus is how do we get internet connectivity to 30,000 people at once? We are working with AT&T and Verizon in our area to try to plan some additional coverage, but things like Wi-Fi, some of the technologies that we typically think of, that could be a real challenge that day, actually getting that connection. When you're considering a place to do a large-scale observation, the primary thing to consider really is where's the sun going to be at that day. So for our stadium, we actually looked at where the sun was going to be at on August 21st in 2015 and 2014, and we mapped out what seats in that stadium are in the shade. And for us, we were having to sell tickets to the stadium, to each of those seats, mostly to control the population coming into that stadium that day. We've taken the seats that are in the shade out of the sales pool, so nobody's stuck in a seat where they can't see a total solar eclipse. Since the next upcoming August 21st is in 2017, 6 months out, basically, around April 21st, 2017, the sun will be in approximately the same position in the sky as it is in August 2017. So that gives you a great opportunity to go out and check out where the sun's position is. And if you walk out to your area and you notice in April that it's shaded by some obstruction, well, that's going to tell you that it will be shaded during the eclipse and you will not see totality there. So you need to take that into consideration. So remember to tune in to the rest of the webcast for additional information on the sun and the total solar eclipse, as well as activities that you can do.
As always, if you would like to hear more from us, please feel free to get in touch. You can find us on Twitter at @NatSolarObs. You can get us on Facebook at National Solar Observatory. And we now have an Instagram account at National Solar Observatory on Instagram.